From Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, this is Hope for the Caregiver, the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, and I'm bringing you 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy. There are more than 65 million Americans right now putting themselves between a vulnerable loved one and even worse challenges. How do you help those folks? That's what this show is all about. And we are so glad that you're with us today. We've got a lot to talk about. There are so many issues that are affecting the family caregiver. It's not just, hey, my grandmother's in a nursing home and I'm a caregiver. There are families with special needs children. There are families dealing with trauma, all kinds of chronic diseases and so forth. And they are very, very weary. They're struggling. They're pulling their hair out. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They don't know where to go sometimes. We get lost in what I call the caregiver fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. And this show is all about helping you as a caregiver navigate through this to a place of healthiness where we're going to give you a well-lit path to a place where you can kind of catch your breath and then develop some better strategies for living calmly and health and even more joyfully as you deal with these things. See, it's not enough to just survive it. We want you to thrive in it. And become a healthier individual as you deal with it. And you can do that. You really can do that. And we're going to show you how. We want to talk with you about it. If you want to be on the show, the number to call is 800-688-9522. 800-688-9522. And I say that very slowly because my wife makes me say it very slowly. and well, she should. And when you call, guess what? You're going to hear the man himself, the Baron of the Board, the Sultan of Sound, the Earl of Engineering, the man who put the care into carry-on luggage. He is John Butler, the Count of Mighty Disco, everyone.
I don't check my bags.
Yes, but TSA does.
Oh.
That was too easy.
That was good.
Too
that
easy.
was good. That was quick, man.
Well,
No. I'm going to give you, not even begrudgingly. I'm not even mad. I'm just impressed.
Well, God love you for your low threshold of impressive.
Wow.
Listen, hey, I got it. Before we get into the show, we got a lot to talk about today. Got a great guest today. Later on the show, Representative Marsha Blackburn is going to be calling in. And our first Congress representative.
Oh, right on.
That's very exciting.
We have a national representative calling into the show, Peter. What is this?
I don't know, John. I'm getting a little afraid.
Almost like it was an important issue or something.
It almost like we're respectable. Don't
tip the hand. Don't.
Listen, I saw this just before I came on, and somebody posted this, and I got to tell you this. This is funny. All right, you ready?
I am.
In England, now this is not going to mean a whole lot to you guys outside of Middle Tennessee. Those of you listening on the Truth Network and around the country and so forth, this won't mean as much to you. But those of you here in the Middle Tennessee area, particularly in Nashville, this is going to mean an awful lot to you.
Oh, no.
In England, they drive on the left side of the road. In Tennessee, we drive on what's left of the road.
Oh, man. I'm not even giving you a rim shot for that one.
That's funny. That's funny.
Are you talking about 440 or like?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was driving on the other day doing, pothole slalom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just.
I saw something about that just us in Michigan apparently take the cake.
I'm like, really? Why is this? But anyway, so we've got a lot to go over with you today, and we're so glad. Again, the number to call is 800-688-9522. We are also streaming live on Facebook Live, and then, of course, a lot of folks listen across the country on iHeart. And I want to welcome Sally out in Central California.
Oh, Sally, welcome.
And thank you very much for joining in. And also, he said he's listening today, a longtime buddy of mine from high school down in Columbia, South Carolina, Chris. And so welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Listen, let's get right to it because I've got a lot to go over today. Today's excuse me, everybody's dealing with this, with the flu and coughing and colds and everything else. And I'm sorry if I don't get the cough button in time. Forgive me on that. All right.
Have you seen your doctor?
No, I'm just seeing the notes here. Oh, that's a very old joke. Actually, I do regularly check in with that, and it's just it hasn't gotten to the point where it's escalated where I'm like sickly.
Okay.
It's just pesky.
Okay.
You know? And for somebody who uses their voice, it becomes very pesky. But there's always Ricola. And so, Ricola. All right. Our caregiver tip of the day. Caregiver tip of the day is brought to you by AARP in Tennessee. AARP.org/TN. Longtime friends of this show, and we've done a lot of stuff with them over the years. They've got a lot of resources for caregivers. I hope you'll check it out. AARP.org/Tennessee. Go check them out and see what they can offer you today. You don't even have to be a member. Just go check it out. I promise you, you'll love what you see. The whole caregiving wing of what AARP is doing is designed to help caregivers. So here's our caregiver tip of the day. Don't accept bad behavior from yourself. Now, we all don't like to accept it from other people, but I want you to think about how you treat yourself as a caregiver. I want you to think about what you say to yourself in those dark recesses of your mind and of your heart, and how hard you are on you. Now, if you met somebody doing what you're doing, would you be equally hard on them? Would you treat them the same way that you treat yourself? I don't think you would. In fact, I don't think I would hang around somebody who treated me the way I treat me at times. And I think this is the thing I want caregivers to understand. I want me to understand this, okay? This is, please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying all these things from a mountaintop where I have achieved some level of nirvana about this. I have to remind myself of these things every single day. This is a journey for me every day. And it's a growth process for all of us in this. But if we accept bad behavior from others and ourselves, what is that doing to us? We know not to accept it from others. We don't have to accept it from others. But do we know that we don't have to accept it from ourselves? We don't have to mentally and silently berate ourselves as we deal with the challenges that we deal with. How many of you are doing that? How many of you are doing that right now, today, and have just beat on yourself and to the point where you're just so discouraged and you have to somehow push yourself to these inhuman extremes to make up for it? You're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I have forgotten more mistakes than most of you got to ever make.
I don't forget them.
You don't forget mine or yours?
No, I think you got the right one the first time.
John's keeping a ledger there. And, we're going to do it. The key is to make amends for them quickly, to own it and move on, but not keep replaying it over and over and over. There's ample opportunity to fail, and there's ample opportunity to succeed as a caregiver. But there's equal amounts of, actually, there's more than ample opportunity to extend grace. And I go back to this theme, and you hear this a lot from me. Grace is a beautiful word. I married a woman named Grace. I love that word, grace. And I don't think we apply it very well to ourselves as caregivers. Do you? Do you think you do? Are you gracious to yourself? Because we tend to be gracious to everybody else. Are you gracious to yourself? Are you gracious to your loved one? And one of the reasons we're not is because internally we are so unsettled. This has got us so taut. We are so frustrated. We are so angry or resentful or weary, whatever. Fill in the adjectives. We're all of that and then some. And it's very hard to extend grace to someone or yourself if you are just a seething cauldron of frustration and resentment. Well, how do you let that stuff go? Well, you start by actually saying, you know what? I'm going to let it go. I'm going to just take a small step and extend grace to myself in this area. Don't try to blanket this thing and fix every little infraction or whatever. Just start with something simple. I'm going to sit down and be still for a moment and then give myself some grace. Blaise Pascal. Is it Pascal or
Pascal?
Pascal. I knew that. That South Carolina comes out of me.
Well. I was like, are we talking about Spinoza or
no?
You know,
I don't know what we're talking about. But I want to say that I heard this quote the other day.
Blaise Pascal.
I don't know. He was a mathematician.
Well, among other things, but yes.
He had this great quote, and I'm paraphrasing because I didn't commit it to memory, but I got the gist of it, that the majority of mankind's problem derive from our inability to sit still.
It is, yeah. He was.
Have you heard that?
No. Oh, yeah. Pascal is an interesting character. He is at the same time. Well, thank you.
So are you, John.
He is at simultaneously incredibly depressing and incredibly just motivating. It's a wonderful combination, and that's the thing. It's all of man's sadness comes from our inability to be alone in a quiet room for even 30 minutes.
Yeah, just to sit still. There's an old Chinese proverb I heard one time that a man who can control his thoughts for 3 minutes can rule the world.
Ooh, I like that.
Ancient Chinese secret, huh? But it's you're too young to even know what that means.
No, I watched Wayne's World.
Very nicely played, El Canto de Mighty Disco. But anyway, that's our caregiver tip of the day: is to don't accept bad behavior from yourself. Don't say that you are stupid. Don't berate yourself and say you were an idiot or you're a fool or you really just screwed up or you're just worthless. And don't tell me that you haven't. Because if you say if you say that you haven't done it, then you haven't been a caregiver long enough. Okay? Because you're going to say it. And I'm saying that's a bad place. Let's move away from that. We're going to mess up. But now we have at least a heading so we know that we don't have to live in that place. And sometimes it takes permission from someone that we can trust to say, you know what? You don't have to do that anymore. You just don't. You really don't have to. You can extend that grace to yourself and find a place of peace and contentment in the midst of it and learn to be at peace with what's going on. And I real quick before we finish this thing, I think that a lot of times we think as caregivers, if we could just solve the aberrant behavior of someone we're taking care of or family members or whatever, then our life is going to get better. And I say nay. I say let's deal with our aberrant behavior. We'll be right back. This is Peter Rosenberger. We'll be right back. I'm Peter Rosenberger, and as a caregiver for a wife with severe disabilities for 3 decades, I, like many caregivers, often put a loved one's health care needs over my own and sometimes settled for a lousy health care plan for myself. All of that changed, however, when I discovered MediShare. MediShare is a different kind of health care company with an incredible focus on the individual. And that's so important for caregivers because we easily lose ourselves in someone else's challenges. But our health care needs are just as important. The folks at MediShare understand that and are intensely engaged in helping me live a healthier life. I've saved money with MediShare, and so far, about $300 per month. But I'm gaining more than just dollars. I'm gaining a community that cares about me as an individual, as a caregiver. Does your healthcare company do that? Mine does. Take a moment to call them right now. 855-25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE. The call is free. The care is priceless. 855-25-SHARE. Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger. Glad you're with us. 800-688 if you want to talk with the Count of Mighty Disco, who will send your voice right in here to the studio. 800-688-9522. At the bottom of the hour, Marsha Blackburn, representative from Tennessee. Congresswoman is calling our show, John.
Moving up in the world.
I mean, and she's running for senator.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit frightening that, you know, I got to hold on a second. Am I respectable?
No. I don't even need to look.
That sounds about right. All right, listen, we're glad you're with us. 800-688-9522. Want to welcome all the folks listening across the country on the Truth Network. And streaming on iHeart across the country. We got a lot of folks, and in Canada. And, of course, where John is big in Nova Scotia area.
Absolutely. Give me some Timmys. Send it on down.
He's got a huge fan base up there. I'm not kidding. Y'all think I'm kidding.
I know. This is not even a joke. I mean, we are
no.
funny people. Well, we think we're funny people.
We're
everybody funny. Now you funny, too.
It's not funny, ha-ha. It's funny like, oh, dear God, kind of funny.
Oh, no.
All right. So, anyway, we had our caregiver tip of the day, which was don't accept bad behavior from yourself. And that was brought to you by our friends at aarp.org/TN, the Tennessee chapter of AARP, the state office here. They do a great job with it. They got a lot of stuff for caregivers. Also, I want to introduce a segment, too, that we do that is talking about listener comment and listener feedback that we have. You know, we get that. I get questions all the time because a lot of caregivers are a little bit nervous coming on the show and talking about it because they think that, you know, well, first off, they may be like in the room being a caregiver.
Yeah, that's probably not the best.
So it's they can approach me sometimes privately, and I get emails in or text or phone calls or so forth. And I had one that was kind of interesting here in light of who's sponsoring this. This is brought to you by our friends at Morning Point Senior Living Center and Memory Care Center.
Okay,
and this is somebody who was taking care of somebody with dementia. And, you know, of course, last week we had on Tracy Maxfield from British Columbia, our dementia caregiver correspondent.
We love Canada here.
Oh, yeah. Canada's, for whatever reason, man, we really – I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
That we have such a presence in Canada. But, hey, you know, take off, you know. I was a little Geddy Lee with. Did you ever see that with Geddy Lee? By the way, never mind.
There was a lot of Geddy Lee that I have seen. At a certain age,
it was with Dave Thomas. I mean, it was those guys and Rick Moranis, and they were like.
Oh yeah. Was it on SCTV?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It was so fun. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
I just digressed a little bit. Sorry, you all. But here it is. Is it okay not to push for deeper conversation with someone who has dementia, because they feel guilty? Because they're having just these shallow conversations, or they just have to basically say what they want to hear.
Okay.
And I say, yeah, it's okay.
It's absolutely fine. Well,
I mean, that's not just okay. It's because that's all that you can do.
Well, and we talked about this last week on the show. They might not remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel.
Well said.
I stole it.
Well, yes, you did. But that's the key. Don't worry about the conversation topic. Focus more on the heart connection.
Yeah.
And you could speak with more than just words. You know, I think it was Augustine, the church father Augustine, that said, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words. You know, you don't have to
one of my
use
favorites.
Words. Sometimes you can connect deeply with music versus words. Go back and just play some of the songs that you knew that they loved. I guarantee you there'll be a connection.
Absolutely.
I've seen that way too many times.
Music is an end run around all of our defenses as humans. It's a strange thing and one of the greatest things. But
I may write that down. I may write that down. Music is an end run around all of our defenses as humans.
It is. I use
John
that line
Butler
a lot.
just said that. You all make sure you write that down. That is wisdom from the Count.
As such that it is.
Such that it is. No, I think that's a legitimate problem, because I think people realize that time's getting short, and we got to cram everything into it. We got to make sure we have all these conversations, and you're not going to be able to do it.
It's unfortunate.
You don't go to the hardware store to buy bread. It's not going to happen. So what you do is you back it down a little bit, be where you are, talk about what you got to talk about, but watch for the nonverbal opportunities, because I think that's what's going to do it. And music would be a big part of that. Sometimes just sitting there and holding their hand, reading to them.
Yeah.
That would be another thing, just to read something to them. You know, get a favorite book that they like, or read a psalm from Scripture, or something that just it's comforting to their spirit, to their heart. And that will transcend the vocabulary that's just not forthcoming. Because I think what's going to happen is you're going to frustrate these individuals, because something inside them knows that they want to connect. I've seen this too many times, but they can't get the words out. And it's very frustrating. Well, you don't want to frustrate them, because then that's end up just going to make everybody uncomfortable and so forth. It is what it is. And I think, again, I go back to I was asked one time in an interview, what is the most difficult thing you face as a caregiver? And hands down, knowing what is mine and what is not mine to fix, to carry, to deal with. So you don't have to fix this. Just it is what it is. Hey, this is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. We'll be right back to the next segment with U.S. Representative Marsha Blackburn. We're going to talk about a lot of issues that are going on across the nation and here in Tennessee as well. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you're here. Thank you for being a part of the show. 800-688-9522. We'll be right back. I'm Peter Rosenberger, and as a caregiver for 30 years, I've learned a lot about healthcare, and that's why I'm so impressed with Medi-Share. I've saved money with Medi-Share, so far about $300 per month. But I'm gaining more than just dollars. I'm gaining a community that cares about me as an individual, as a caregiver. Does your healthcare company do that? Mine does. Take a moment to call Medi-Share right now. 855-25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE. The call is free. The care is priceless. Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you more than 3 decades of experience to help you take care of business. And by the way, speaking of taking care of business, I have on the phone the hardest working woman in politics. Well, wait a minute. I got to give you a tie with that. You and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I think, are the 2 hardest working women in politics. This is Marsha Blackburn, who is just a delight, and I've enjoyed hanging out with her for a long time. And you don't mind sharing the title with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, do you?
Oh, not at all. And I think I might even throw Kellyanne Conway into that.
I think so too. I think so too. Three hard-working women. You know, you were so gracious to invite me up to the State of the Union, and thank you for. We had such a marvelous time up there, and I got to watch you up close and personal doing what you do. And Marsha, and by the way, to all the listeners, Marsha Blackburn, 7th District here in Tennessee. She's also running for the U.S. Senate. She said I have permission to call her Marsha. She doesn't stand on ceremony a lot, and even though ceremony is very important to her, but she doesn't stand on it. So please don't think I'm being disrespectful to her, because I think she prefers it. Is that correct?
You've got that exactly right. That's right.
Well, you had me up there, and I can't tell you the number of texts and calls and comments I got from folks saying thank you for representing family caregivers at such an event. And so on behalf of them, I thank you for noticing this. The reason I'm having you on today, there are some big issues facing our country right now that have direct ties to the family caregiver, and you're right in the middle of all of them. And
I am indeed.
So,
and it was
let's go through them.
Wonderful to have you up and to talk about some of these and do some interviews with you. And, of course, you and I have for quite a period of time talked about the issue with opioids and drugs, and we've also talked about the need for broadband so that expands the options for home health care. And you're right. My committee, Energy and Commerce, and the subcommittee that I chair, Communications and Technology, we are all over these issues and are working on them every day.
I had a conversation online with somebody the other day. I'm part of several caregiver groups, and there was somebody that was talking about how they had such a difficult time with taking care of a loved one who did not want to go to the doctor. And I said, have you thought about telemedicine? And her response was, we live in a rural area. I don't think it would work for us. And I thought, well, then you need to listen to the show on Sunday, because this is one of the things that you and I have talked about. So let's jump. Before we get into other things, let's just start with telecommunications. Talk about that. What's going on? Bring people up to speed about where you are, why this is such a passion, what you're hoping to accomplish with this.
Right. And this is one of those issues that you say, it really underpins everything else and makes a lot of other things possible. And what we know is that 39% of rural America is they don't have high-speed internet. They are what you call unserved when it comes to high-speed internet. So our goal is to close that digital divide And right now, I have so many families who can't get a high-speed internet connection for children to do homework, or they can't get high-speed internet so that they can use telemedicine for those that are homebound, and counties that can't get jobs and economic development because they don't have access to high-speed internet. So there are all of these other things that you never really think about. And it affects so many other quality of life, access, and public safety issues. So right now, with the President's infrastructure bill, the number one infrastructure issue is access to high-speed internet. Building out this infrastructure, some of it is going to be wireline, some fiber, some wireless, fixed wireless, and some even satellite. And how the high-speed internet comes into an area really doesn't, I don't care. What I do care about is that you get it. And that is what we are trying to solve, the problem we're trying to solve, so that no longer will children have to finish their chores and eat their supper and then get back in the van and drive into town for 20 minutes to find a Wi-Fi connection so they can do homework. And so that individuals who are caregivers and have a loved one who has a difficulty getting to and from the doctor will be able to use telemedicine and remote monitoring and digital imaging and things that will ease their life and speed their care. So, you know, Peter, that is the goal. And sometimes I say with these high-tech issues, it is high-touch indeed, because it is something that you say, well, it's complex, it's complicated, it sounds very technical. That is all true. But it brings that quality of life and that ease of living that people desire to have.
Well, building a pizza oven is complex, but using it to cook a pizza is not. And I think
you're right.
The things that we can do is provide these things for folks to use, and the applications are endless. And I think when you and I did this interview up there at the Capitol, the reporter, I think, was surprised because I said this morning, you know, the phlebotomist came to my house. I let them in remotely with my phone, and they were able to draw blood from Gracie and run all the tests, and I let them out and then set the alarm back on and so forth. That's the kind of thing that frees up a caregiver. Caregivers suffer from 3 I's, I call them. We lose our identity, we become isolated, and we lose our independence. And if you can go into these rural areas and help them with technology the same way we have in more urban areas, all of a sudden people have a great deal more independence, and that affects job performance because, you know, 47% of caregivers are in the workforce, and there's 65 million caregivers. So that's a lot of people that are having to go back and forth from work, taking off time and dealing with these kinds of things. And all of a sudden now we can start using electronic monitor, and it doesn't replace the person. It just gives another tool in the tool belt. And so that's a huge issue. And I'm very grateful that you're running. What do you think how is that looking, by the way? Is that being met with?
It looks really good. It looks really good. I've got 25 bills that will speed this process. Some are from Republicans, some from Democrats. And we've already done the hearing. We will do what is called a markup, which means the bills are considered. We will pass them out of subcommittee. Then we're going to send them to the floor and over to the Senate. And, you know, by the time we get into the summer, you'll see these moving forward. And I think that they are going to, you know, this is something the President is committed to. We have grant money from the Universal Service Fund that is going to be used for this, and quite frankly, I think it's a very good use of those dollars, and I think that this is something the President will push to get finished this year.
So you really think we can get it done by this year?
Yes, I do.
Oh, that is exciting.
That would be getting the way cleared and the grant money in the pipeline. And then, of course, your local communities and the private sector would take it up from there. And then within a couple of years, this digital divide should begin to close.
That is very exciting. Okay, let's move to another wonderful topic that's affecting family caregivers, opioids. And there's been a whole bunch of back and forth on this. You've been caught in the crosshairs on a lot of these things. Unpack that for us and kind of help let people see the whole story, the whole picture, because I don't think that's been an accurate portrayal of some things that are going on. So I'd love to hear you just unpack it for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. This is an issue we have worked on for years, not just a couple of months or a couple of years, but going back probably 8 or 9 years. And in 2012 was the first time that one of my colleagues, Mary Bono, and I wrote HHS and the DEA about how they were addressing this issue, because there were 30,000 people that had lost their lives in 2012 from the use of opioids and overdoses. And we each knew individuals, family or friends, that were suffering with this issue. So Mary and I wrote to say, tell us what your game plan is. And then we began working to try to address these issues. Now, so this shows you it's something we've been on for a long time. Now, one of the things that we do know is that now you're at a point where the number of lives lost is over 60,000. And as a wife and a mother and a friend, it is absolutely devastating to me to see this impact. And at our committee, we've been investigating the situation in West Virginia for a couple of years and trying to get information from the DEA so that we can change legislation if we need to. What we want to make sure of is that we provide the necessary tools that your local agencies and your state agencies need to fight this. And there are so many federal agencies, whether it is the DEA or the National Institutes of Health or the Food and Drug Administration or the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Agency or the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, they're all involved in this. And we continue to say, tell us on our end, as we talk to families and meet with families and meet with local law enforcement, we continue to say, tell us what we need to do to help you in your fight. Tell us how to address this. And there are some things. We are getting ready to bring out a package of eight bills this next week. One of those bills will speed up the research work and the pipeline for approval for the non-addictive painkillers. We're also looking at how you change the rehab and recovery programs. And I was down in Savannah, Tennessee, meeting with Teen Challenge, a group that we have there. I was down there yesterday meeting with them and looking at some of these residential recovery programs and visiting their program and the way they apply their program. So, those are things. And Peter, looking at this, you've got that legitimate use for individuals that have chronic issues or they're in hospice or veterans who are suffering with severe pain from injuries in battle, and they need that opiate formulary. And then you have those who are buying things off the street or misusing prescription pills. And, of course, now we're into the issue that has arisen with the fentanyl, and we're addressing that issue also. So these are there are items and steps we can take legislatively. Yes, we are doing those. It is not something that is going to be a quick fix, but we have said let's do everything possible. Now, money doesn't solve it, but there is money that has been appropriated that is going in to help with this, tools for law enforcement, and then also revamping some of these rehab treatment and recovery programs. And we've passed a couple of bills. One was CARA, another one, 21st Century Cures, and recently the budget bill that we did.
Well, these are all, and I got to watch the clock here, but these are all dealing with right now that you're doing, and I'm very grateful for that. You know, I got one thing that doesn't cost any money, and this is one of the things you and I have talked about this, and I would, if you wouldn't mind, also just making the president aware of this, that every time they mention the word opioids and chronic pain, just to ask folks to take a look at the caregiver. That's it, because if the caregiver's not in a healthy place, what happens is those caregivers can easily either become a victim or an enabler. And and it happens so quick, and if the caregiver's in a good place, it gives a better chance of that person with chronic pain to work through alternative methods and so forth. And this is something I'm on just a real passion about. And I really appreciate the battle you're doing. Like I said, I got to see you up close and personal up at the Capitol and watch you work, and that's extraordinary. Unfortunately, we're bumping up against the clock here, but I wanted to take just a moment. You're running for Senate. This is a huge step, big step, and you and I talked about this in your journey, and you coming to that decision point. As you, in 30 seconds, can you tell me, I know that's hard, that's unfair to you to give you just 30 seconds of this, but just as you look at this across the landscape of Tennessee, where you're going as a senator, what's on your heart about that?
You know, I look at my grandsons and their future, and I look at the ineffectiveness of the Senate and the fact that they cannot get things accomplished. In the House, we've sent them over 400 bills. They have actually taken up about 100 bills and have fewer than that they've sent to the president's desk. The Senate is dysfunctional. You cannot fix it with people that have broken it. It is time for us to have the Senate act like the majority that they are and to take action on the agenda that the American people want to see and to put bills on the floor, get them to the president's desk.
Well, if anybody can do it, you can. Marsha Blackburn from the 7th District here in Tennessee, and what a great treat to have you call into the show. Thank you for the hard work you're doing, and appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
This is the nation's #1 show for the family caregiver. We'll be right back. I'm Peter Rosenberger, and as a caregiver for a wife with severe disabilities for 3 decades, I, like many caregivers, often put a loved one's health care needs over my own and sometimes settled for a lousy health care plan for myself. All of that changed, however, when I discovered Medi-Share. Medi-Share is a different kind of health care company with an incredible focus on the individual. And that's so important for caregivers because we easily lose ourselves in someone else's challenges. But our health care needs are just as important. The folks at Medi-Share understand that and are intensely engaged in helping me live a healthier life. I've saved money with Medi-Share, and so far, about $300 per month. But I'm gaining more than just dollars. I'm gaining a community that cares about me as an individual, as a caregiver. Does your healthcare company do that? Mine does. Take a moment to call them right now, 855-25-SHARE. That's 855-25-SHARE. The call is free. The care is priceless. 855-25-SHARE. Really?
I offer no excuse for my actions.
Really? Hey, welcome back to the show, For Caregivers About Caregivers, hosted by a caregiver and one crazy count of Mighty Disco behind.
Well, you mentioned that there is something that lawmakers or leaders or public figures can do at a time that at this time about the opioid crisis that costs no money whatsoever.
There is, and we just got off the phone with Representative Marsha Blackburn, and the one thing that we can do is every time you mention the word opioid, say something to the family caregiver. If you've got a chronic pain patient that is on opioids, and if you've got somebody that you know are involved with that, just reach out to that caregiver, just check in with them. Hey, are you okay? And now they're gonna say, oh yes, we're okay, we're doing fine, or whatever, or we're having a rough time. Get them to speak in first person singular. That's really important because that's how you start helping a caregiver, is to let them speak in first person singular. And so anyway, thank you for that, John. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. It doesn't cost money to care about someone. Okay? Don't think that you have to attach a fiscal note with it to care about someone. So that's hopefully my thought for today to plant it in your mind as you go through life and do that. So it's been a fabulous show. I appreciate her comments on that and the telecommunications. Sorry, we had a little bit of disruption on the tone of the call, but maybe that's why we need a better infrastructure for telecommunication.
Yeah.
Hey, I picked up my ID badge this week.
Oh, for the prison?
I did. It's got my picture on it and everything.
Oh, well.
And you know what I could do with this badge?
How do you look in orange?
You're not right. It clashes with my hair.
Well,
what I could do with this badge is I could go over there. See, I've been going over there for years with our program that we do with prosthetic limbs. You know, we recycle prosthetic legs. They come from all over the country. Got several in this week, and inmates volunteer to recycle these. They disassemble them so we can use the parts such as pylons, feet, knee. Screws, adapters, connectors, all that kind of stuff. But I've always had an escort to go back into the shop.
Well, to be fair.
But now I can wear my little ID badge and walk in unfettered.
Ah, look at you. Right on.
Unfettered, even. I can go back to the shop because I have gone through all kinds of security things and all kinds of check. When I have to scan the thing on it and so forth,
right.
I have to be very judicious on that. But I volunteered today. I went through a training program and all kinds of stuff, and it's very cool. I mean, I'm kind of thrilled about it, and it's a part of what we do at standingwithhope.com. And this prison over here is run by CoreCivic, and they've been a partner with us for a long time to use this inmate work program. And, you know, we lost Billy Graham this week.
We did.
And his casket was made by prisoners in Angola prison down in Louisiana.
Okay.
And I believe his wife's casket was as well. So he's going to be laying in state at the rotunda in a casket made by inmates, which I think is quite marvelous. And it's a beautiful but simple casket.
Yeah.
And they did this for Billy Graham. And I thought, you know, inmates want to produce. They don't like being in prison. They want to do something that has value. They want to improve their life. Sometimes they just need a very focused path on how to do that. And ours at Standing with Hope is one of the pathways that offer them a chance to do something positive with their hands. And I'm so grateful to the folks at CoreCivic that help us do that. And if you want to see more about that, standingwithhope.com and see how you can get involved. We take all these parts, we ship them over to West Africa, where we've been working now for over a dozen years, teaching and equipping local workers on how to build prosthetic limbs for their own people. And we can use these parts. I call it Operation Footloose. Turn that foot loose so we can recycle it. Because there are people that these are part of their loved one. They don't want to just throw it away and it end up in a dumpster somewhere. And we can use that. This was Gracie's vision when my wife Gracie, when she lost her legs. And she said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. I want to trust God with this. This is bigger than me, and I want to trust God to do something extraordinary with this tremendous loss. And guess what? He did just that and more. And so standingwithhope.com if you want to see more about what we're doing, and I'd love for you to be a part of it and just get engaged with what we're doing. Come along on a trip with us. We're trying to go back this year. So, hey, listen, it's been a very exciting show today. We've had a good time, John. Thank you very much.
As always,
we had our first today. A member of Congress called our show.
A sitting member of Congress. What is this?
Yeah,
crack that neck a little bit.
We're doing okay this week. Last week was rough.
Oh, no.
But I'm just thrilled that, you know, how about that?
Well, these are important issues.
I got news for you psychos. We're getting better.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, bud.
Hey, listen, we'll see you next week. This will be out on the web later on tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. HopeForTheCaregiver.com. We'll see you next week.